Srimad is language, it's spoken on the front of the body. Now, Srimad, Ramsa, Privraj, Charyashkar, Srimad is language. Spoken on the Spitako of the body. Anand Vidika Samindaki, Nam Charyashkar, Yastako, Praise God, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Shiva Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyam Radha Giri Govardhan Ki Rajma Vrindavan Ki Maya Panamadikar Ki Purushottam Shri Jagannath Pradhan Ki Gurumai Gurumai Ki Vasudeva Bhakti Ki Kali Gopalan Vrindavan Kirtan Dekhi Ki Tara Brahma Namare Vishwa Mantra Ki
Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Vasakunalam Gokule Brajamanam Yashodabhiyodukala Paramrishtamadhyam tato dutagopya Virantamohornecha yugmamrijantam Param bhoja yugmena satankanecham Muhusvasatam prajiye kanka kanta Sitagaiva damodaram bhaktibadham Iti Tripsvalilabhirananda kunde Svagasham nimajantam akyapayantam Tariye shitakeshu bhaktarchitatvam Puna prematastam satavritti vande Varam deva moksham na mokshavadimba Nachanyam rineham varesharapiha Nidam teva purnata gopalapala Sadame manasya virastam kimanyaya Nidam te mukham pojam atyantanilai Vriktam kuntalai snigdharataishcha gopya Namoshtum bitam bimbaraktatadame Manasya virastamalam lakshalapai Namo Deva Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukha Jalabdhi Magdam Kripadrishti Vishtati Dinam Patanu Grihane Shamamagyame Dakshidrishya Kuveratma Jopadha Murtyaiva Yadvat Kaya Mochito Bhakti Bhajo Kritoja Tata prema bhaktim svakam me prayachta Namokshe graho me stiramodareha Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Damne Variyodarayata Vishvasya Dhamne. Namo Radhikaya Tvariya Priyaya Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam Namo Radhikaya Tvariya Priyaya Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe. To the Supreme Controller who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistening earrings swing to and fro, who manifested himself in Gokula, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat in fear of Mother Yashoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord Sri Damodar I offer my humble obeisances.
Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna's babyhood drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. To the devotees who are attracted only to his majestic aspects of Narayana in Vaikuntha, the Lord herein reveals, I am conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. To the Supreme Lord Damodar, my obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times.
Om. Om Jnanatimirandasya Niranjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyareva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 17, Text number 4. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: After purifying the 7 planets near Dhruvaloka, the pole star, the Ganges water is carried through the spaceways of the demigods and billions of celestial airplanes. Billions, wow. Then it inundates the moon, Chandraloka, and finally reaches Lord Brahma's abode atop Mount Meru. Purport: We should always remember that the Ganges River comes from the causal ocean beyond the covering of the universe. After the water of the causal ocean leaks through the hole created by Lord Vamanandeva, it flows down to Dhruvaloka, the pole star, and then to the 7 planets beneath Dhruvaloka. Then it is carried to the moon by innumerable celestial airplanes. And then it falls to the top of Mount Meru, which is known as Sumeru Parvata. In this way, the water of the Ganges finally reaches the lower planets and the peaks of the Himalayas, and from there it flows through Haridwar and throughout the plains of India, purifying the entire land. How the Ganges water reaches the various planets from the top of the universe is explained herein. Celestial airplanes carry the water from the planets of the sages to other planets. So-called advanced scientists of the modern age are trying to go to higher planets, but at the same time they are experiencing a power shortage on Earth. If they were actually capable scientists, they would personally go by airplane to other planets, but this they are unable to do. Having now given up their moon excursions, they are attempting to go to other planets, but without success. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, I guess from this verse and several verses thereafter, we're hearing about the passage of the Ganges from the hole in the universe that was created by Vamanadev's toe, and how the passage that the Ganges River takes once it enters the universe, starting with purifying Dhruvaloka, that's what we were hearing previously, and then the 7 planets just beneath Dhruvaloka. And then from there are billions of celestial airplanes that carry the water to other parts of the universe. And then it flows to the moon, and then down to the top of Mount Meru, which is where Lord Brahma lives. I guess so. The moon must be pretty high up. if the Ganges flows through first the moon, and then to the top of Mount Meru, which is where Lord Brahma lives. And then from there it comes down gradually through the playgrounds of the demigods, and then to the peaks of the Himalayas, and then through. Sounds pretty far out, huh? So I don't know, that's what the verse is speaking about, the passageway of the Ganges. And in Prabhupada's purport, he took the time to criticize the modern scientists, as he often will tend to do, on this point about how the devas are taking various, the waters of the Ganges to various planets by billions of celestial airplanes. So in that particular point, Prabhupada wants to point out, if the scientists were so great, then they should be able to fly to other planets, at will with their machines. But this they are unable to do. They should be able to personally go there. If they're so great, why don't they just go there? And then he brings up, of course they attempted, or some may believe that they did, go to the moon. And but they've stopped their moon excursions. Sometimes this doubt comes up, if we've gone to the moon, then why not go again? And I think they say that there's water on the moon, right? Do they say like that, the modern scientists? No, I don't know. I'm not on the up and up with these types of topics. In other words, that life may be sustainable there. But after so many years, they have not gone back, and they've given up their moon excursions and trying to go to other planets, which may bring up the doubt, well, we haven't even successfully done anything on this planet, why go to other planets? I just, Prabhupada's bringing up this point of criticism. Anyway, the interesting thing is that one may wonder why Prabhupada is often led to criticize scientists and Mayavadis, particularly when it sometimes, like in today's verse, it's a little bit, perhaps someone may think it's unnecessary or out of context or not required. especially if one is not so scientifically trained. How can you make comments about all of these things? But whenever Prabhupada gets a chance, he's criticizing the Mayavadis and the scientists particularly. Anyway, so the idea here is that a lot of these descriptions are far out, and that requires faith. And then the criticism of modern scientists and so on, that is to help, that is actually to assist our faith. Because at the present moment, our faith is arrested by the combination and permutations of the modes of nature in the form of various scientific gadgets and achievements and theories. The things that are being produced by modern man of science and so on, they're just various combinations of the modes of material nature. Or in other words, they're products of the illusory energy. And but they tend to arrest our faith. And of course, because we generally nowadays it's kind of ingrained in us that faith means belief. So oftentimes we may not feel that the various achievements of the modern world have impacted our faith in any way. What does that have to do with our faith? You know, what does a computer have to do with our faith? Or the creation of a spaceship have to do with our faith? Because we generally tend to think of faith as belief. So I can believe in something, and these achievements in modern science don't impact that at all. But the reality is that they've actually arrested our faith. The various achievements, particularly of science, and their various theories have actually captured our faith, and it's making it hard for us to be spiritually progressive. And how that can be made out is by seeing our determination for the spiritual. In order for determination to be steady, there has to be faith. I think a good example might be, Prabhupada mentions this point. Maybe a good example is Thomas Edison. Is Thomas Edison? He was known to have tried to make the light bulb. How many times he failed before it? Huh? Over 1,000 times? A lot. And I think he was asked, at least I heard like this, I don't know if this is true. He was asked if he's getting discouraged. After trying so many times, you might get discouraged. Maybe it was, so let's say 1,000 times. I think it was a little bit less than that, but it was a huge number was there. And he responded to that by saying, no, I figured out 1,000 ways that it doesn't work. And he remained determined to continue to try until he actually became successful. So what was guiding that determination? How can a person be so determined even after failing so many times? Underlying the determination is a conviction or a shraddha or faith that says that it is possible, that it can be achieved. Otherwise, why even attempt it? Unless you were convinced that it could actually be achieved, why would you keep trying even after so many times failing? So underlying the determination is a particular shraddha or a particular faith that keeps one going. So then what happens with modern achievements in the world and various theories also, they arrest our faith by slowing our determination for the spiritual. So although we tend to think that we're very faithful in Krishna, especially because we may have we may be steady in our rituals in Krishna consciousness, which is of course indicative of our faith, but then at least some faith. But then other times of the day we're captured by frivolity in the form of whatever. There's so many things out there, particularly with computers nowadays. The internet and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the MySpace. I don't know if MySpace is even popular anymore. Tweeting, and so on. So in this way, one is infatuated by these things actually, and so his movement towards Krishna is actually halted on account of movement on the material platform, and then subsequent absorption. Because as we get more and more involved with these things, they tend to absorb our consciousness more and take us away from Krishna. And then so much so that one may become actually satisfied with the fact that I've done my standard amount of ritual, in Krishna consciousness. Now the rest of my time will be engaged in whatever practical affairs involving various things that may not have anything to do with Krishna. So in this way, it becomes necessary for the acharyas, when they're teaching, to make criticisms of the material energy constantly. Although many times people think that it's negative, or they don't appreciate the criticisms of the Shastra so much. But the reason that it comes up is because it is actually says something about our faith and Krishna consciousness. If we were actually faithful entities, as we tend to think that we are, then such discussion would never be necessary. You can just discuss Leela. But the reality is that because we are captured by the material energy, it's kind of hard to appreciate that we're in a realm of misconception and misunderstanding. We appreciate it intellectually, of course, because it's kind of evident. But we don't appreciate how we are also captured by misconception and misunderstanding. We don't generally tend to appreciate that so much. So then it becomes necessary for the guru or the acharya to criticize these things in order to educate his disciples. So this is mentioned, one of the qualities of the advanced devotee that we hear from the Nectar of Instruction, that he's free from the tendency to criticize. And so he's an exalted personality. But Shukadeva Goswami, when he opens up his teachings in the Bhagavatam, is all criticism of householder existence. That's how he opens up the Bhagavatam. Maitreya Muni, when he's educating Vidura, he makes a lot of criticism of King Vena and his mentality. He even calls him out by name. It's not like he just talked about the principle of atheism or something like that. But he said, King Vena, he's this, and he's like that. He actually calls him out by name. So why is that? Why does he do that? Because it's necessary for teaching the disciples, or those who are taking shelter of the spiritual master. It becomes necessary for criticizing in order to free their faith from the infatuation caused by the modes of material nature. And context here in the form of the various theories, the various gadgets created by modern science and so on, which is actually stopping our movement in Krishna consciousness. Before, when life was probably much more simple, it might have been easier to move in Krishna consciousness. There wasn't so much variety of activity to do that was very distracting. But now there's literally millions of things that a person can do to occupy his time now. And that way it becomes necessary for criticizing regularly the material energy or the sciences, as Prabhupada is doing here, in order to try to release our faith from its bondage by the infatuating material nature in the form of these theories and achievements. So Prabhupada is criticized this here. Although I've heard a lot of devotees, they get sometimes annoyed by this, but I think their annoyance might be also says something of their faith as well. Because why would Prabhupada find it necessary to criticize these things whenever chance he gets? Just like Mayavadi, I've heard many devotees get frustrated at why Prabhupada criticized the Mayavadis so much. And that's not the first time the question was asked. Some of Prabhupada's disciples themselves asked, like, why Prabhupada's criticizing the Mayavadis? We don't see the Mayavadis. Where are the Mayavadis at? Prabhupada's, and then finally one devotee realized, oh, we are the Mayavadis. We are the ones who are having so many impersonal ideas about God and the absolute truth and so on. And therefore it becomes necessary for critique. So the Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhaktilata Bija, he gives the seed of bhakti. The Bhaktilata Bija means the seed of bhakti. The seed of bhakti is faith and Krishna consciousness. Then under the care of the Guru, Diksha Guru or otherwise a Shiksha Guru, under the care of some Guru, he's like a gardener. The seed is there, but when the seed is growing, other things grow up with the seed, like the weeds that can choke the seed and so on. So Guru is required to help the germination and further growth of the flower of bhakti that is given in a seed form by the Guru. So another Guru, or the same Guru, he has to see to it that it grows up. And part of seeing to that is criticism is required. And it's not that these things are very disturbing to their minds, just like Gokulananda was sharing with us when the moon landing happened in 1969, the boys were watching it on TV and they were getting captured by that. Prabhupada, look, they're landing on the moon. And Prabhupada said, you're not massaging properly. He wasn't giving any attention to it. And then the voice was like, maybe he's not understanding the gravity of this achievement. So for a second time there, Prabhupada, they're landing on the moon. He said, but there's direct evidence. Prabhupada said, you're not massaging properly. He was then showing the devotees how to massage. He wasn't giving any attention to that. So the idea is that we are easily captured by misconception, misunderstanding. So then, criticism is often used in the Bhagavatam by great souls and so on. And the reason for that is actually just to free up our movement in Krishna consciousness, which has actually become stagnant on account of faith in all these other things, the theories and the gadgets and so on. And we have to admit that that is the case, because when you can understand how your movement might be checked when you see various doubts manifesting, when you hear a lot of far out things in Christian consciousness. After all, if God exists, and anything is possible, really. Many times people ask us how we can believe in such far out things. How is it? But if God exists, what is so far out? Just like when we tell the story of Govardhan, Krishna was 7 years old. He lifted the mountain with his pinky finger. He held it there for 7 days. Now, that's a pretty far out story. But how is it that we all can believe in such things? But I often, I've been asked this question many times, and my answer has always been that if I can believe in a God who's the source of the whole cosmos, then what is the big deal in believing in a God who can hold a mountain for 7 days? What is it? That is actually a small achievement in comparison to creating a whole cosmos and all the intricacies, which is totally inconceivable to the modern mind. So what is the big deal if Krishna lifts a mountain for 7 days, or that he can even have a form and so on? So when we are contacting these far out descriptions in the scriptures, we may see that doubts pop up, and those doubts will actually arrest our movement in Krishna consciousness, especially as they become more acute, when they don't get answers and so on. And therefore you'll find the acharyas just giving criticisms also of the modern world. That's just to free up our movement so that the seed of faith can grow like that. So all we're hearing about in today's verse is just the passage of the Ganges in the universe, which is quite a far out description. And then Prabhupada is just giving a criticism of modern science, and that what have they achieved? Here it is mentioned billions of celestials take Ganges waters to the various directions of the universe, but they cannot even go to a higher planet like this. Why he's giving that criticism is what I presented today. So are there any questions? Anyone wants to say anything on that? Or any comments? Yeah.
Thank you for your eloquent description of this verse. Very nice. Oftentimes we see faults in others. We talk about criticism, but oftentimes we're seeing the fault in others, so we're trying to correct them in knowledge. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said that the only reason we see faults in others is because we're honeycombed with faults ourselves. So how is it that we can understand that by seeing, let's say, a fault of someone else, that we also have this fault?
I guess by being a little introspective. Of course, it depends on what is the nature of the fault that you're seeing. Like, for example, someone may say, Prabhu, I see you have a big false ego. And then maybe by being a little introspective and analyzing your own interactions with several devotees or living entities, you might come to realize that you also have a big false ego, and so on. Or if you have a hard time perceiving them, because generally it's harder for us to see our own faults. Just like the stories there in the Mahabharata, where I think Dronacharya asked Duryodhana, find someone who is better than you in the military arts. So he went out, then he asked Yudhishthira Maharaj, find someone who is worse than you in the military arts. And they both came back empty-handed. Duryodhana said, I couldn't find anyone that was better than me. And Yudhishthira Maharaj said, I couldn't find anyone who was less than me. So it tells them something about their consciousness. So the idea that is that it may be harder for us to self-evaluate, and that is also due to the influence of false ego. So therefore, it is usually the business of the acharya or the guru to find faults in one and correct them, or a superior devotee, a superior Vaishnava, in order to help us make improvement. The function of a Madhyamadikari, he will find faults in order to elevate our consciousness. So if we're not able to see it in ourselves, I think we can take it for granted. Conditioned life means anartha, and one of the major anarthas is criticism of others. So we can take it for granted, but we may not always be able to perceive it directly how we're infected by such anartha. So therefore, the superior association of a superior Vaishnava is required in order to point it out, oftentimes at least, oftentimes when we're not able to see it in ourselves. By a little introspection, I think we could probably find a lot of things wrong in our character. I don't think it should be too difficult. But in the case where we find it's challenging, then we can associate with a superior Vaishnava. He can correct us, if he's merciful. Otherwise, it may be a long road ahead of you. So you can take it for granted that we're finding faults because we are ourselves having anartha like that. Siddhartha, you wanted to say something?
What I was hoping actually to hear from fifth canto is the actual purpose for which Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami to describe the universe. That was my main, you can say, sankalpa, desire. But it looks like, for example, I want to know, for example, where is Chicago, where is US, where is the world, where is the planetary system. I'm not attached to which planets are there in the planetary system, but roughly, at least some planets that are visible to the telescope, where are they? Where is sun, where is moon, and then where are heavenly planets and where are the hellish planets?
You're looking for
for a
description and picture of that.
For a picture or a series of pictures that will give me a mental idea. All I've been hearing is several explanations of what Prabhupada said is correct and why he did this, why he did that, and why scientists are foolish. I mean, we hear that many times, but I'm not looking at. I'm looking at that one paragraph worth of information or that 1-2 diagrams. That's all I need. Where do I get that?
The diagram. Well, like when Daichi put the little PowerPoint, something like that.
There are like 4 models. It's not very clear that day, and even in the video, it wasn't clear. For example, I want to know here is Chicago, and from Chicago to Moon, it's like 10 million miles, and Chicago to Sun, it's 1 million miles. It's all hazy now.
Yeah. So I don't know. You said the video wasn't very clear. I didn't see the video. I was on the altar that time. Yeah. That's okay, but he's not saying that. He's saying where are the models that we can just see the models and try to get a kind of like an idea of what's being talked about. That's all he's asking about. Okay, so where can you get that? That's the question. That was so you weren't satisfied with the video. Okay, Daito Prabhu's got some.
given in his presentation was not all in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He also referenced the Jyotisha Shastra, like this is something that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and the Surya Siddhanta, and this is where a lot of the other numbers and details that you might be looking for are coming from, are the Jyotisha Shastra and Surya Siddhanta, both of which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used and translated into Bengali or from Bengali to something. He translated it, so.
Okay, so what are you saying, Siddharth? They're providing information. The model, well, see, there's two things with that. The discussion, the models of the universe are very complex discussions. And practically, they may be irrelevant for many of us on account of the complexity of the subject matter. So we're getting a gist understanding from reading the purports here in the Bhagavatam class. For more detailed understanding, it might require more qualification to enter into a more substantial discussion on the models of the universe. In fact, when people are watching the video, or even when Daita gave his little presentation, at first you're kind of able to follow along, and after 2, 3, 4 verses, and then you kind of like bewildered, and it's just like, all right, let me just hear it for the sake of hearing. So it might require a separate type of discussion with more involved, and of course, I would even venture to say qualified persons to go into some of the things that are being discussed there. So they have persons who are doing that. We have to think more in terms of what is the actual purpose of the Bhagavatam. So I find your criticism to be something akin to the criticism of persons who don't appreciate Prabhupada's Gita, because every verse he talks about surrender, even when there's verses that have nothing to do with such discussion. And I find your criticism to be something akin to that, because there's a reason why Prabhupada makes that type of discussion, because there's an actual purpose Krishna has in the Gita. That purpose is to get us to surrender. So in every place, Prabhupada would bring it up. So also in terms of a Bhagavatam discussion, what is the ultimate purpose of the Bhagavatam? Now, if you're interested in a more detailed discussion of the universe, which some of us might be interested in, then we can contact or find out those persons who are dealing with like Vedic Planetarium and the various models. Ravindra Swarup, I think he had one model also, and Dhanavir Goswami, he has one model. I think you can find access to that. But in the Bhagavatam, we're trying to achieve another purpose ultimately by the discussion, not just trying to understand what is the universe, what is the distance from this and that. Those things are not, and I think Gokulananda read us something from the first canto, chapter 17, where Prabhupada was speaking about the inconceivable nature of the universe for modern scientists and also for transcendentalists. And therefore, a general description is being given by Shukadeva Goswami, as he's pointing out, because ultimately there's another purpose that's trying to be achieved, namely the purpose of promoting pure devotion to God. So I partially agree with what you're saying, and I can understand where you're coming from, but I think the critique is something akin to the criticism of Prabhupada's Gita for mentioning surrender in every purport or bhakti. Yeah. Sure. 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 Sure, sure. But then do we do that in the Bhagavad Gita class, or do we do it in the Bhakti Shastri class? So that's the point that I'm making. The point I'm making is that what are we ultimately trying to achieve by our discussion? We're trying to achieve a greater devotion to Krishna, and not just a good ability to analyze what's being discussed, which may actually create an obstacle in our achieving that. So for those who want to go into more detailed analysis, of course, that is not against devotional service either. And it is important for various scholars to go into various details of our philosophy for those who are interested in those different branches. But now we're having an open discussion, and what is the purpose that we're ultimately trying to achieve? when you deal, it's just like, take another example, the fall down of the jiva, one that we've had a separate discussion on. It's a quite complicated issue, at least within ISKCON. That's not something you would present in this type of format, because that would create too much confusion and it would actually block our ability to move forward in Krishna consciousness. But it's nonetheless an important subject matter which may be taken on, let's say, in a seminar on the subject matter, or outside of this particular format, another type of format. So we have to, time, place, circumstance, consideration has to be there, and like that. So I think you should think in terms of time, place, circumstance, and then it might create a more broadened approach to your understanding. Are there any other questions, comments? Yeah. He's got a map for you.
This is about 10th canto. So
Which canto?
Yeah, it's like all.
So this is India. I don't know if this satisfies your inquiry, but it's very sweet. He was obviously hearing your concern.
And also yesterday I saw oh yeah, yesterday in Divan I had gone Divan for preaching. Somebody showed me in computer.
You can speak into the mic.
Yeah, somebody showed me in computer by
Uh-huh.
satellite. You
Yeah.
can see any remote village anywhere in the world.
Yeah, they call it
like
Google
I saw
Earth.
my village also, street. Can you believe that from here, from the internet, you can see a satellite, using the satellites.
Of course, that might, in terms of helping us see the Ganges enter into the universe, or the whole created in the universe, and how it's that it might, Google Earth might not help us to find that out. So anyway, he obviously heard your concern. It was very sweet. Is there anything else that anyone would like to say or inquire about? Okay, thank you very much for the Prabhupada ki jai. Jai.
I was going to go, Chicago to join some of these students. So last week I mentioned another secret movie, and I want to take some Krishna mantras for my mom. And today morning when I asked her, like, is it okay if I take 5 Krishna mantras? I'd already mentioned it for 3 days, but her reaction was a little like, when she was a little annoyed by that, I could tell she was like, why is it necessary to get everyone a lunch, like that. So, and I get a little freaked out when people like question me on something that I don't think needs to be questioned. So I couldn't really explain that like, the purpose is to discuss how we're listening to out there, kind of build a relationship of trust with them. So I've never really met someone, and show them what Krishna worship looks like. So I couldn't really get into all these details, but I was just a little like, so now I'm trying to think of like, what to do to them. So